Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Kelly's Astrology podcast. As we head into the middle of February, the focus is on both Mars and Venus. Both of these planets are going to change signs and move into Aquarius this week, and that's important for two different reasons. First, it's going to shift the astro vibe away from the more grounded, traditional, practical themes of Capricorn, and instead it's going to draw your attention even more towards the forward-looking, innovative, and intellectual themes of Aquarius. Second, as these planets are moving into Aquarius, it means that first Mars and then Venus are going to meet up with Pluto. So that's what I'm going to focus on in today's episode. Before I do, I want to let you know about my next online astrology training, which is all about aspects. Now, aspects are one of those critical keys to chart interpretation. They show the action in the chart and in your life, and they also describe the flow of energy that is in your birth chart that influences events and experiences in your life. It's through these aspects or planetary combinations that astrologers can gain insight around your personality and find out things like any strengths that you might have, as well as identify any challenges that you might face. Learning what an aspect is and how to interpret that aspect, these are essential steps on your journey to being able to interpret a birth chart. The next live cohort for my 4-part aspects training begins on February 26th. You can sign up and start learning today. Pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com, to get started. Switching back now to this week's episode. So we've got Mars and Venus moving into Aquarius. This means that for a few days, at least until the sun moves into Pisces, we're going to have 4 planets and Pluto in Aquarius. So sort of from February 16 through to late in the day on February 18th, maybe February 19th, depending on where you are, there is this supercharged Aquarius theme happening. So there will likely be a lot going on in your mind as you process all these ideas and you start asking questions about future possibilities. You might have a lot of thoughts about collaborating or about offering support and opportunities to various groups or communities of people. And you might just be dealing with this real mental buzz or this excitement of lots of possibilities sort of revealing themselves or making themselves known. With so many planets in just one air sign, the emphasis is definitely on the head, your ideas, your thoughts, the need for conversation and connection. It's also a huge emphasis on the Aquarius part of your birth chart. So if you know your chart, think about the house topics that are governed by Aquarius for you. It's not the 11th house. You want to find where Aquarius is in your chart. It could be 5th house of kids and creativity. It could be 9th house of wisdom and travel and adventure. And those topics of your Aquarius house are going to be really emphasized and really activated, particularly this week. So with so much, I always think with air, like the element of air, our energy or our awareness is really around our head and even in the space immediately above our head, that sort of energetic kind of upward orientation. And with such an emphasis, around that head type energy, you really might need to balance this out by making a conscious effort to stay in your body, to pull your energetic awareness down into the belly or even in around your feet. You might need to really make an effort to make sure you remember to eat regularly or to stick with your regular movement or exercise rituals. Those kind of earthy, embodied experiences are a nice balancing to this very strong air emphasis that we've got this week. A sort of a general piece with so many planets in an air sign for a few days. But of course, the real energy and the real intensity peaks on those days when Mars meets Pluto and then when Venus meets Pluto. And they're each forming aspects. Mars is going to conjunct Pluto and Venus is going to conjunct Pluto this week. So Mars will conjunct Pluto on February 14, and Venus will follow a few days later, making her conjunction to Pluto on February 17. So I want to talk a little bit about each of these aspects and the different topics and feel of the aspect. Well, let's talk about Mars conjunct Pluto first. So Mars conjunct Pluto is a really power pair. So this is the planet of power, Pluto, being fired up by energetic Mars, by that kind of fuel of Mars. And so this is a very powerful aspect or a very powerful planetary combination. It brings intensity and this sort of obsessive drive that is Mars conjunct Pluto. Now, Mars conjunct Pluto also has a controlling or a pushy undertone. So while there are constructive ways we can use this Mars-Pluto aspect, we're going to need to just be alert to this really pushy or a little bit of a controlling dynamic popping up around February 14 when Mars conjuncts Pluto. Mars is very willful, and Pluto can really intensify this willful energy, this kind of I want, I will, I am kind of principle of Mars. When Mars and Pluto combine like this, there is then an intensely focused energy. And if there is a particular problem or challenge that you're really obsessed with right now, you might find that you're able to really push through. The idea of being able to move mountains with your efforts is one of the constructive outlets or constructive potential outlets of this Mars conjunct Pluto aspect, that with real focus and drive and dedication and determination, you can move through something or create progress around something that has been really stuck. Mars Pluto also has this kind of fight things to the end vibe because it is a little bit combative. And so the caution with this Mars Pluto aspect is that you might get caught up in a disagreement, especially about ideas or about information. You're being very firm or rigid or even stubborn about your position, and somebody that you're engaging with is being equally firm or stubborn about their position. And in the worst scenario, we end up in this kind of stalemate, butting heads situation. On the other hand, if you're able to join forces with a like-minded person or group where you're passionate about the same principles or the same vision for the future, you may actually be able to create some real movement, some real momentum for those goals or those ideals that you share with others. So it sort of depends on whether we're pitted against people around this ideas and intellectual vision, or whether we're working together and joining forces. Now, Mars does meet Pluto every 2 years. So this is not the first time you've had a Mars-Pluto aspect in your life. We've each had plenty of Mars conjunct Pluto aspects throughout our lives, almost every 2 years religiously. What's a little different about this particular Mars-Pluto aspect is it's the first one happening in the sign of Aquarius. And so this week might reveal a new passion project or a new topic that you want to obsess over, or a new kind of debate or disagreement that you might find yourself returning to periodically in the years to come. This is the first Mars conjunct Pluto aspect in Aquarius, but it won't be the last. There'll be another one about every 2 years from now until 2043. So we've got lots of Mars Pluto in Aquarius aspects ahead, but this is the first one. And it's always important from that omen or divinatory perspective to pay attention to what comes up around the first time that something happens. So if there is an argument that you find yourself in, if there is a project or a challenge that you find yourself wanting to take on, these are clues as to where you want to channel more energy in the years ahead. So you can think about this Mars conjunct Pluto aspect as an activation about new areas and topics for exploration. You might be open to new ways of motivating yourself. That's another Mars thing. How do I get things done? You might be learning or figuring out a different strategy for decision making, which is also something that Mars can help us with. Mars is meeting Pluto in an air sign. So information is going to help with decision making and it's going to help with motivating yourself. And with Mars conjunct Pluto, you may find that you're able to motivate yourself to tackle a more complex or more kind of engrossing and all-encompassing kind of problem, challenge, or goal. So we don't want to shy away from things that might be a little complicated right now, but we want to come in to them with a little bit of objectivity and a willingness to kind of figure things out, to navigate and to negotiate without losing track of the path that we're trying to move forward on. Now, with so much newness, this idea of Mars and Pluto making this meeting in Aquarius for the first time. So Mars and Pluto meet, they're used to working together, but the setting and the tone and the topics of that meeting happening in Aquarius, that's what's new. So with all this newness, you might be forgiven for not getting things right the first time. It may be that you're making a few bloopers along the way. It is the first Mars Pluto aspect, but you're going to get another chance 2 years from now. 2 years from now, when Mars meets Pluto in Aquarius, you're going to revisit the choices and the changes that you made now. And you're going to think about, what kind of progress did I create? How was I able to action those ideas to move my life forward? So while we're here now in the present, think about the ideas that are invigorating for you, that you want to center your energies and your actions around. So with Mars conjunct Pluto, there is a real pushing quality. Mars is always wanting to create progress and wanting to push forward. Mars is sometimes impatient for progress. And that can create this willingness to take risks, but also it indicates you might be able to connect with a desire to break new ground and to really push forward in new ways. We don't want to fall back on the old habits or tendencies of the last 15 years with Mars linking to Pluto in Capricorn. We want to think about, how am I going to use current technology, the information at my hand today, the people around me right now? How am I going to harness the knowledge and the connections I have so that I can think about motivation, decision making, action taking, and moving forward in new ways that are relevant to being alive right now in 2024? Now, Mars is also the planet of anger and aggression. And when we're interpreting a birth chart, we're always looking to what's going on with Mars to see what kind of relationship or connection to their own anger an individual might have. Are they more volatile and short-tempered? Are they more mellow? Are they a little bit passive aggressive? Are they someone who takes a long time to speak up about the things they want, or are they really quick to get things moving? And so, keeping in mind that Mars is about anger, assertiveness, aggression, with Mars conjunct Pluto this week, it might mean that it's time to explore new ways to both identify and then express any anger that you do have. It's not a bad thing to acknowledge that you're really angry or pissed off about something. How you express that or act on it, that can sometimes be where we cause a little bit more of an issue, or we add heat into an already hot situation. But just feeling the anger, that in and of itself isn't bad. So you probably don't want simmering resentments to be building up. And so exploring ways to talk about your frustrations and annoyances before they become really set in and rigid, that's going to be really helpful. And that's where that sort of detached, objective, arm's length point of view of Mars in Aquarius can be helpful. It's not that you're not affected by things, but that you're able to take a step back before you respond. And even that idea of thinking and then responding rather than kind of feeling and reacting is going to shift your encounters with other people. So there's a lot of different topics, a lot of really charged topics, and a lot of energy that is released as Mars and Pluto come together. And I think one of our biggest challenges individually is to channel that energy, that kind of ball of fire towards something that is going to help us move forward. Aquarius is a sign that is looking to where we're going. And that is a big change of perspective from where both Pluto has been in Capricorn for the last 15 years and where Mars has just recently been in Capricorn for the last 6 weeks. Capricorn is a sign that is aware of tradition and past patterns and wants to preserve and protect them. In Aquarius, we're less interested in preserving and protecting the past and more interested in how can we go forward in a way that's better, not just for me, but for those around me. So that's kind of the collaborative spirit of Aquarius. Now, Aquarius is a fixed air sign. It's air, but it's fixed air. And we can sometimes be a little bit stubborn about our point of view or our perspective when we have planets in Aquarius or we're dealing with planets in Aquarius by transit. Once you've figured out what is kind of a good groove for you, you don't actually have to keep changing that, but you might find that as you move into new situations and you're meeting different people, you might have to express or act on the pattern that's good for you. You might have to tell someone new about it, or you might have to adapt it to a new situation. And so that's what we're trying to navigate here with this Mars Pluto is figuring out how to move forward in a way that is still good for you, but in new circumstances or in a new situation. So that's a lot about the Mars conjunct Pluto aspect that is forming this week for the first time in the sign of Aquarius. And that is Wednesday, February 14. You might be feeling a bit of this energy on Tuesday or Thursday. Mars aspects tend to be just a little bit more of a lingering thing than, say, a moon aspect or a sun aspect. So it's midweek for that Mars Pluto peak. If you've been feeling if you've been simmering and getting frustrated and increasingly kind of hot and angry about something, you might need to address it in a very direct way when Mars meets Pluto on Wednesday. So just a few days after the Mars-Pluto meeting, Venus is going to come into Aquarius and meet Pluto herself. Venus is a different kind of planet with different needs and different areas of interest and different ways of operating. So this Venus-Pluto combination, while it's going to have some of that intensity and that obsessive theme, it's going to show up around some different areas of our life. Venus, of course, is the planet about beauty and about pleasure and about partnerships. Venus can describe the people that we want to bond with, as well as the kinds of partnerships or connections we form. With Venus moving into an air sign, we're looking for that mental connection with someone, that idea of talking with someone and being able to engage at a compatible intellectual level. So Venus with Pluto in Aquarius means that your cravings and your desire for connection might be really intense. You may want to be closer to someone special, even though you might still want to maintain a level of self-reliance. That is sort of the paradox of Venus in Aquarius with Pluto. Venus-Pluto wants really deep, kind of loyal, intimate, deeply trusting connections. Venus in Aquarius wants those connections, but doesn't want to give up its individuality and doesn't want to give up all of its space for that. So trying to find that sweet balance between depth of connection, trust, and loyalty with someone where you can have a sense of emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, even intellectual intimacy with that person without feeling like you are having to give up or abandon yourself. That's going to be the trick. With Venus Pluto, we are looking to figure out how we can deepen that sense of trust and togetherness. We're exploring what loyalty looks like, and that's going to require some conversations and some discussion with the people that you're in close connection with. You might also be a little bit obsessed with pleasure and enjoyment. I want more Venus in my life. I want to have more fun. I want things to be more sweet. Basically, with Venus Pluto, we want to make sure that we have time to enjoy the good in life, to prioritize those sweet moments. And what I find really interesting and intriguing about Venus conjunct Pluto, which is Saturday, the 17th of February, it can mean that it can help bring forward clues and ideas about how you can transform your relationships for the better. Aquarius is a sign, when we say it's a visionary sign, it looks forward and it thinks, how much better could things be? Not in an idealistic or fairy tale like rose-colored glasses way, just how could this work better for everyone involved? So when it's a romantic relationship, how could this be better for each of us? Or if it's a family dynamic or a family constellation, How could we do things differently so that the kids are a little calmer and a little bit more like connected, and the parents are kind of working together, and there is a more cohesive unit? In a friendship setting, how could we tweak things so that it's better for everybody? To do that, we have to have some pretty honest conversations about what each person might like, which can be harder than it sounds. We also might have to be willing to name and say out loud the things that aren't working so well, that we don't like so much. So, when I say Venus with Pluto wants to help you understand and get information about how to transform your relationships for the better, that might mean having the courage to reveal a truth that may indicate something that's not working so well. With Venus and Pluto together, power themes in relationship are likely to come up. And that means we're wanting to explore the balance of power between self and another. We also might feel really empowered to address a topic or a situation that's having an impact on you. So there's this whole sort of deep examination, investigation process in the relationship space that Venus is kind of encouraged into through her connection with Pluto. The idea of magnetism or having these intense attractions or magnetic encounters, this is also possible as Pluto kind of adds this charming, or enhances, I should say, Venus's charm and her alluring qualities. It's a fine line in love between like obsession and devotion. And that edge we're exploring with Venus conjunct Pluto. In some ways, you might actually be a little bit obsessed with all the different facets of Venus. For some reason, I think about Venus in Aquarius and I think about, like a diamond or a crystal, like a sun catcher, where, the energy is there, but it can come out in many different ways. So, with Venus conjunct Pluto, you might find yourself wanting more beauty and comfort, a little bit more luxury, a little bit more, ease in your life. You might be preoccupied with a particular item or object that you feel you have to have: a handbag, a couch, this particular type of blanket for the bed. It could be any random thing. I'm always recording these things at home, so I often think about homeware things, but it could be a piece of technology for your office or something for your car. But that idea of this preoccupation or this sort of a constant obsessing over, I just really want that desiring of that luxury item or experience. That's a bit of a Venus Pluto thing too. You might want to surround yourself with beauty, whether that's art or other images that you enjoy. Maybe it's spending time in settings that you find pleasing. Maybe it's nature, maybe it's a bookstore, maybe it's something different altogether. Venus with Pluto is sort of encouraging you to own whatever it is that you define as beauty, and then to go towards that or to have more of that. You might want more connection with people who are on the same wavelength as you, people who are passionate about the same kinds of wisdom or philosophical points of view as you. Venus with Pluto in Aquarius, I mean, there's so many pieces about this that is not good at faking or pretending. This is about honesty and truth telling with self and with loved ones. And so, with that idea of Venus with Pluto in Aquarius, it may be a reminder to honor your authentic needs around friendship and in relationships. You may be less open to compromise, in fact, and find that you really want to hold on to what you enjoy or what matters to you. And then we're in that beautiful place of exploring and building connection when we each have a different definition of what might be enjoyable, for instance. And just like for Mars, this is a new combination for Venus to unite with Pluto in Aquarius. And just like with Mars, Venus meets Pluto on a regular schedule. For Venus to meet Pluto, that happens about every year. So we've all had lots of Venus-Pluto aspects, even if you didn't know you were having them. But for the last 15 years or so, each one of those Venus-Pluto aspects has been in the sign of Capricorn, which is more, it's a little bit more traditional in its desire for structured and committed relationships, whereas Venus, Pluto in Aquarius is certainly more open-minded. And one of the things that immediately pops to my mind is, I'm hearing, kind of my middle age now. And I've got a lot of friends that are a few years older than me, and we're thinking about later in life and retiring. And you hear these great stories about women buying, tiny homes on a property near each other and having some autonomy and independence, but creating this type of community feel. And this idea of Venus with Pluto in Aquarius is a little bit like that. How can we find the edge of staying connected to community, but still maintaining a little bit of independence and autonomy? And with Aquarius, we're thinking about what might be some novel or original ways to do that. What might be ways that are relevant for the current circumstances or society that we live in? And it is different than just falling back on traditions or habits that have kind of run for a long time. And that's where we see some of the innovation with Aquarius. And so, if I was to say one very simple summary of Venus with Pluto in Aquarius, it's getting those early ideas about how we're going to innovate connection and relationship over the next 2 decades. And so this week's inklings about what you might want to try or change around or within relationships can be the seeds of ideas that you explore with increasingly greater depth in the years to come. It may mean you get one piece now and you're working on that now. And then a year from now, when Venus gets to Pluto, you get another piece and you're going increasingly towards this more innovative and more authentic experience around relationships. Venus is going to now join with Pluto in Aquarius every year, almost every year, for the next 20 years. And so that new perspective that you might tap into this coming weekend about who to bond with and how to relate, that you're curious about, that's going to form part of your personal journey of working with Pluto in Aquarius in the years to come. With two planets making new connections this week, Mars conjunct Pluto in Aquarius and Venus conjunct Pluto in Aquarius, you also might find yourself making new connections. You might see links between ideas and people that you just didn't connect before. You might be in this place of discovery where you're figuring out fresh ways of living and being and doing and relating. When astrologers say it's a new era, when we're talking about a planet like Pluto changing signs, coming into a different part of the zodiac, this is some of what we mean. That a new placement for an important planet like Pluto means so many parts of our chart and our life need to operate differently. They kind of need to update to the new energetic reality that we're in. And it's really up to each of us individually to pay attention to what we might need to shift for ourselves and then explore the most interesting ways to go about evolving. So here's to breaking new ground this week. Here's to paying attention to the things that you're curious about and honoring them as little clues as to what you're going to be moving towards in the years to come. Thanks so much for listening this week, everyone. Take care, and I'll see you next week.